Good morning. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to the January Terry Third Thursday. Tried to be our winter edition, I think. My name is Dale Gotro. I'm the director of the Institute for Leadership Advancement in the Terry College at the University of Georgia. And I know you're accustomed to seeing Dean Robert Silmacrest or perhaps Jill Walton kick off the program. Well, both of them have good reasons to not be here this morning. Dr. Silmacrest is in the midst of delivering his economic outlook presentations. He was at East Georgia College on Tuesday, he was at Savannah yesterday, and he'll be at Jekyll Island tomorrow for the Coastal Georgia Economic Outlook. And Jill Walton, well, we have a picture hopefully that will let you know where Jill is at. This is Charlie and Reese Walton. They were born last Friday. Don't ask me to tell you which one is Charlie and which one's Reese. All I know is Charlie weighed about 6 pounds and Reese weighed almost 7 pounds. So congratulations to Jill and Jeffrey, and our sympathies to them for the sleep they won't be getting in the next few months, certainly. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Institute for Leadership Advancement in Terry College we're in our 7th year, and I had the privilege of coming about 18 months ago to lead the efforts in this institute. And our primary goal is really to provide our students with curricular and extracurricular experiences that help them develop their leadership skills. And we believe that when layered on top of the excellent business education they're already receiving, we're helping to accelerate their career advancement and provide even greater value to the organizations and communities that they're part of. So it's my pleasure to be part of Terry and serve in this capacity. Before I go any further, let me recognize our sponsors for the Terry Third Thursday. Our premier corporate sponsor is the Bank of North Georgia. I'm not sure who all is here today, but if you're here, if you'll stand. They're normally represented by Elizabeth Livengood, Deborah Boyce, Kelly Green, Buzz Law, and Bruce Deering. Are you here this morning? Buzz is here. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Deloitte is also a corporate sponsor. Is anyone here from Deloitte this morning? And then we have 2 media sponsors I'd like to recognize. The Atlanta Business Chronicle. We're joined by Joel Wilker, Shelley Lewis, Cheryl McDonnell, and Jenny Munsell. Thank you for being here. And Public Broadcasting Atlanta, I haven't seen Harriet this morning. Harriet Hoskins Aberhall, did she slip in? Thank you also for your sponsorship. So we appreciate all of our sponsors and the work that they do, and they make this possible for us. Our upcoming programs, let me point out, February 21st, Doug Benn will be with us. Doug is the Executive Vice President and CFO of Rare Hospitality. Rare Hospitality owns and operates over 300 restaurants. Most of them are Longhorn Steakhouse and Capital Grill restaurants. They are in the midst of a $1.4 billion acquisition by Darden Restaurants. And Doug will be speaking to us February 21st. He is a 1976 BBA and 1982 Master of Accounting graduate of Terry. March 20th, Julio Ramirez will be here. Julio is the Executive Vice President of Global Operations for Burger King Incorporated, and he is a 1977 graduate of the Terry MBA program. And then April 17th, we'll also have Damon Evans with us. Damon is the Athletic Director at the University of Georgia and Terry alum. You can register for these programs online or certainly see any of the alumni relations staff here. So now let me tell you a little about our speaker this morning. Jim Langford is a project executive for Linger Longer Communities. Linger Longer is probably best known for its resort community, Reynolds Plantation, located in Lake Oconee in Greensboro. This past September, Linger Longer was selected by the Jekyll Island Authority as the private sector partner for a broad-based redevelopment of the island's tourist attractions, the amenities and accommodations that are all under renovation. As project executive, Jim is in charge of the long-term revitalization of Jekyll Island as both a vacation and convention destination. Previously, Jim served as Georgia Director of the Trust for Public Land, a national nonprofit organization that preserves parks and open space. He is a former member of the Georgia Board of Natural Resources and the Governor's Environmental Advisory Council. He has also served on the board of the Georgia Center for Law in the Public Interest. He's been appointed by 4 different governors to serve on public commissions focused on the protection of environmental or cultural resources. He is the founder of the Kusawati Foundation, a nonprofit organization that focuses on the protection of archaeological sites and in environmentally sensitive areas in Georgia. Working closely with American Indian tribes, he was the primary author of Georgia's antiquities laws that protect archaeological resources and human burial sites and remains. In his corporate career, Jim held positions with Coca-Cola Company in Atlanta, New York, Buenos Aires, and the Caribbean. Following that, from 1985 to 2004, he was involved in the co-founding and startup of several high-tech ventures focused on electronic commerce. Jim earned his undergraduate degree in journalism from the University of Georgia and his MBA from the Harvard Business School. Please join me in welcoming Jim Langford to Terry Third Thursday. Jim? Speaking of technology, let's see if I can turn on the device that's going to let me speak. I don't see a green button yet. There it goes. Okay. Can you hear me? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate your introduction. It's too long. I'm glad to be here today, and boy, what a full room for a terrible weather day. I found the closest tie I could find to beach sand today without looking like a Georgia Tech tie. So that's the best I could do. And Tech did pretty good last night, and with apologies to Jamie Reynolds. Where is Jamie? I know he's here. There he is. With apologies to Jamie, who's a University of North Carolina graduate. I guess I was rooting for Tech. I'm one of those. My father was a cheerleader at Georgia in 1942 when they went to the Rose Bowl. So I'm one of the few undergrads that I knew that knew all the words to all the fight songs at Georgia before I ever got there to school. And so, and I'm in that old school of rooting for Tech, sort of, most of the time, because I want them to do well, except when Georgia plays them. So I was rooting for them last night, Jamie. I apologize, especially since Georgia beat Tech, of course, earlier in the week. So I got to get my Georgia Tech play in there a little bit. We're here to talk about something that is sentimentally dear to me, and I hope to most of you. Certainly, if you're a native Georgian, perhaps the first time you ever saw the ocean was at Jekyll Island. Certainly, the first time I ever saw the ocean was at Jekyll in 1958. I was 5 years old, and I still remember every detail of that trip. Jekyll was just that kind of special place that people went. Now, I'm from Calhoun, which is up in northwest Georgia, and before expressways, it must have taken, I know it was 12, 14 hours, to get from Calhoun to Jekyll Island. It was all day and all night, and we got there around midnight. And there was the old causeway had a drawbridge back then that went up and down, and they woke us up. My parents did, and my 2 sisters, and said, "Oh, get up, please! We want you to see the drawbridge and the shrimp boat going under the drawbridge." And it was midnight and dark, and we got out and we're kind of sleepy, and we looked down there in the water, and I said, "Is that the ocean?" And my father said, "Well, yes, that's ocean water down there." And I said, "Oh, that's great," and my sisters were there, and my older sister said, "Well, and you know what? It's down there, don't you?" I said, "No, I don't." She said, "It's an octopus. There's an octopus down there, and if you get too close, he's going to get you." Well, of course, I was terrified and ran and jumped back in the car and all those things. But those are the things you remember about going to the beach. And I remember the sea turtles. Everybody thinks about that protection of the sea turtles is a somewhat recent thing. It's not. I remember in the 50s, people talking about the sea turtles and the value of protecting their nesting areas. They've been talking about that a long time. And so that educational germ there, that little seed that was planted about those environmental issues, stayed with me. And I'm sure anybody else who visited Jekyll as a child, you learn those things. You learn the value of a barrier island. You learn the value of the ocean. You learned about ocean life, and particularly about the turtles at Jekyll. Well, over the years, over the past 30, 40, 50 years, a lot of people have come to Jekyll
but they don't come like they used to. People over the years have come to expect something else out of a beach destination, unfortunately. A lot of people say, well, they want to go where there's a lot more activity. They want to go where there's more fun things to do for kids, and there's a long list of what those things might be. And so Jekyll has gone down in its visitation, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. This is an opportunity to bring Jekyll back. Now, what does that mean? How far do we bring Jekyll back? And what does bringing it back mean? What is it that we want Jekyll to be long term? And just as importantly, what is it that we don't want Jekyll to be long term? And I'm sure all of you have an idea about that. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail too. But I think we don't want it to be a Panama City, Florida. We don't, with all respect to Panama City and its Chamber of Commerce, we don't want it to be a Panama City. We don't want it to be a Hilton Head, probably, again, with respect to their Chamber of Commerce, or Myrtle Beach, or even a St. Simon's. Jekyll's got its own identity, and its cultural and environmental resources are very, very critical to its success, to its past, to its success, to its future. That's what it ought to be anchored to, and that's what we need to remember. And thank goodness we've got a combination of 3 state laws that will protect 75% of Jekyll forever, as long as we don't mess around with those laws, and I don't think we should. And so all of this recent discussion about Jekyll the past several months, year or so, is a good thing, because a lot of people have kind of forgotten about Jekyll, certainly down at the legislature and the governor, and you never heard Jekyll mentioned in a political race, except back in the 1940s and 50s. People just have kind of forgotten about it, and that's unfortunate. So this is a time to put it back at the front burner. Put it back at the front burner. You've probably read a lot of things in the newspaper over the past year or so about Jekyll and all kinds of controversy about this and that, and we'll get into some of that too. But it's a good thing to have it at the front burner. Have everybody thinking about Jekyll again, because it's one of those great resources that we have that Georgia really should treasure in a great way. So we're going to discuss that a little bit. What I want to do with you is spend a little time talking about the details of what our proposal has been, Linger Longer Communities, and talking about how it fits into this picture of revitalization for Jekyll. Now, my background in historic preservation and all those cultural resources and those things, I'd love to have 2 hours to talk about this, the background of Jekyll, because it's interesting. And we don't have time in this discussion today, and we haven't had time in this discussion, over the past year or so about revitalizing Jekyll. But this is one of the great resources that Jekyll has. Its background, its history, its culture, and we don't get a chance to talk about it very much. But we know about the early days, the Jekyll Island Club era, the landmark historic events that happened there, the creation of the Federal Reserve, the first transcontinental telephone call happened from Jekyll as well. Some things like that back in its early kind of glory days, 1890 to 1920, sort of in that period. Well, the state of Georgia acquired Jekyll in 1947. Jekyll had a decline from, everybody said, well, everybody left Jekyll because of World War II. That's not true. People stopped coming to Jekyll in a steady decline beginning in the 1920s. And it was interesting because some of the younger of the wealthy set didn't like some of the stuffy stuff that their parents had been doing in the old Jekyll Island Club. They wanted to go to more exciting places like Havana, Cuba, or Nassau, or somewhere else, or even Miami as it was beginning to come on as a beach destination. So Jekyll fell into a decline even back then, and revitalization was talked about even in the 1930s and 1940s. And finally, it had gone down so low, the state acquired it for almost nothing in 1947 and began to think about what to do with it. And the same issues in the 1940s and 50s that we're talking about today. How much of a beach destination do we make it? What does that look like? What's it supposed to be? Who's supposed to be able to come here? And of course, you got this fight between M.E. Thompson and Herman Talmadge, and M.E. Thompson said it's an island for all Georgians, for the plain people of Georgia, I think is the language that was used. So it was truly for all Georgians. Causeway, that's what that meant. Put a causeway out there so everybody can get there. And Jekyll's only one of 3 islands that has a causeway. It's Tybee, it's St. Simon's, and Jekyll have a causeway. So you can get out there to the island itself. New hotels accommodating this growing number of visitors. Big effort back in those days to get people to come to Jekyll. Get people to come to Jekyll, giving free trips away. Somebody even told me a story about how they had a contest among high school crossing guard kids and grammar school kids who were crossing guards and putting them all on a school bus, and it took them 10 hours to get from Macon to Jekyll, because there weren't any expressways. But it was a big deal to go to Jekyll, to go to a beach destination like that in the 50s. Well, Jekyll's in that decline, that stage where structures are more than 30 years old, declining competitive positioning versus these other states. This loss of convention business is a concrete piece of evidence. $7.7 million Jekyll will lose in 2008 to Florida and South Carolina from only 16 groups who once came to the island every year. And 13 of those 16 groups says, we're not coming back until there's a better convention center and some better hotels. They've said that. And this is information that the Jekyll Island Authority and their marketing people get from talking directly to these groups and their meeting planners. So we know these things very well. The Jekyll Island Authority is then economically hindered to maintain and upgrade the existing facilities. They have to be self-sustaining. The state of Georgia can't just pump money into Jekyll Island. By law, the Jekyll Island Authority has got to make the island self-sustaining, economically sustaining. So the convention center, the historic district, and the historic district, if you haven't been to Jekyll lately, I'm sure most of you have, but you know what's been done at the historic district and the revitalization of those buildings over the past 20 years is a fantastic thing. That's expensive. Just keeping the roof on some of those buildings is expensive. There's some of those cottages haven't been refurbished yet, and they need to be. There are a lot of great things that can happen at the historic district, but those things require money. Walking and biking paths. That's the number one thing that people say that they want as a recreational amenity at Jekyll Island. More than golf, more than anything else, the walking and biking paths are things that people want. And those things are relatively inexpensive to create and maintain, but you got to have something in the pot to be able to maintain those. We've even got on the table a master plan proposal for a new plan for creating better walking and biking paths at Jekyll, and we want to see that moved forward. Picnic areas, so that people who are there on a day trip can have a place to go to the beach and other parts of the island to enjoy. Beach renourishment. There's erosion going on part of Jekyll, significant erosion on the north side of the island. Now there's accretion going on the south side, but a lot of erosion going on, and so that you need to have beach renourishment. It's not cheap. It is expensive. Federal government will chip in some, but the state of Georgia, Jekyll Island Authority, need to come forward and chip in some more. The declining visitation. 50% decline in causeway traffic over a period of time, and you can kind of see the odd thing here. We think this is the Olympic spike in here in the 95-96 time period. Still working with DOT on how they got some of their numbers, but the point is a steady decline in causeway traffic and also in the way that they compute visitors at the gate. A 32% decline in golf rounds, a 29% decline in historic district tours, a 24% decline in hotel room nights. All of those giving evidence to that decline. In June of 2007, the Jekyll Island Authority issued an RFP to choose a revitalization partner. They just figured, we've got to have help from the private sector to help us figure out a way to revitalize Jekyll. A can of paint down at the convention center isn't going to do it. Revitalizing a couple of hotels isn't going to do it. It's going to take something more than that to make it happen. In September 2007, Jekyll Island Authority unanimously selected us, Linger Communities, to be that partner. I left the Trust Republic Land at the end of May and went to see Jamie Reynolds. Now there are multiple Jamie Reynolds. You got to understand that. Mercer and Jamie Reynolds are cousins, and they created Lake Oconee and the Reynolds Plantation several years ago. Mercer's son, Jamie, is who is here today. Jamie has a son named Jamie, so there are several of those floating around, and we always have to kind of educate people as to which ones are which. I thought about changing my name from Jim to Jamie, but I decided I could keep my own name. But Jamie, Big Jamie is what we call Big Jamie, was on the Board of Natural Resources with me, and he says that when they sat us down together, and my politics were pretty different from his, and my background of historic preservation and archaeology and and preserving land and fighting developers in a lot of cases, was very different from his. And so they sat us down next to each other. And after a few months, he said, I think that was a social experiment. They wanted to see how well we could get along together. And we got along pretty well. And one of the reasons that we got along is because I respected what the Reynolds family has done and continues to do with regard to the natural resources and natural landscapes. What they do is that they don't go in and they don't cut down all the trees first and bulldoze everything like a lot of developers do. They look at the natural landscape and use it first. Use it in its natural setting and work your development around it. Let that natural landscape speak and let it speak loudly. You will maximize the value of your development if you do that. A lot of good, smart developers know that. They know how to do that. And the Reynolds family is one of those. So I joined the organization the first week of July, and our proposal was due on August the 13th. So in 5 weeks, we had to put together a huge master proposal to win this request for proposal, and we did. But I'm telling you, it was 20-hour, 24-hour days. On some of those days, we pulled together 8 or 9 companies to help us. A number of organizations, had to run all the numbers, had to come up with a plan, put together a real nice book. All those things to win it, and we did. We were unanimously selected in September 2007. This is then the basis for a private-public partnership that occurs in a lot of state parks. And then this is a state-owned property, yes, 100% state-owned. And what we're going to do, we're there to help the state revitalize Jekyll. Yes, to have a profit motive and a profit percentage there for us to create that economic engine. But the Jekyll Island Authority will have a percentage of those profits, a percentage of revenues, actually, is what they get. To maintain their operations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Why linger longer? The quality of the proposed plan, that was one component. Financial strength. Don't want somebody who's going to run out of money, 24 months down the road. You got to have somebody who's got some staying power. Deep and relevant experience in making these kind of things happen. A strong team. Desire to be the long-term partner and building to hold. Don't just build this thing up as an investment in 5 or 6 years, then you're gone. They wanted somebody, Jekyll Island Authority in the state of Georgia wants somebody who's going to be there long term as a partner. Again, linger longer, created Reynolds Plantation at Lake Oconee, other properties, Reynolds Landing, Achasta, that's in development up in Dahlonega. The philosophy, minimal natural disturbance and long-lasting communities, 2 very key components. Now, what we're going to do at Jekyll is not a Reynolds Plantation. A lot of speculation in the newspaper about that. Not true. Not gated communities, no Ritz-Carltons, none of that kind of thing. Truly a mix of accommodations at the right kind of price levels so that this can be a destination for everybody. That's what we're trying to do. The current site, the site that we're talking about working with on Jekyll, is relatively small compared to Jekyll Island. Jekyll Island's over 6,000 acres, and we're talking about 63 acres. Some people say, well, gee, I read the newspaper. I got the idea you want to develop all of Jekyll Island. No. It's 63 acres in this plan. It's where the existing convention center is. If you come over the causeway today, the causeway dead ends at the old convention center, the existing convention center, and some asphalt parking lots that kind of are on both sides of that convention center. That's the area that we're talking about. Now, there's a couple of other details where, yes, we're talking about cutting into, in a minimal way, into some of the forests, and we're trying to avoid a lot of that. But there are some things that we will do that are beyond that part that's just the asphalt parking lots. And I'll tell you more detail about that in a minute. There's an old strip shopping center, too, across the street there, a putt-putt course and a playground, and we'll talk about that, too. This land use today at Jekyll, a large percentage of the land at Jekyll is for golf fairways. Now, there are 3 state laws that protect land at Jekyll. In fact, it's a combination of those laws protect about 75% of Jekyll. And so a portion that is considered in the developed area that can be developed or redeveloped includes golf fairways. Golf fairways is about 400 acres at Jekyll today. Residential and associated roads is about 300 acres. Airport infrastructure and other roads, 275, something like that. Historic district is down here a little over about 100 acres or so. Recreational amenities. The proposed village is that little red block down there, that 63 acres that we're talking about. So you can see how it fits in with these other things. Again, here's the graphic that shows that 75% of Jekyll remaining undeveloped. The planned site is less than 1%, and that's that little red piece down there in about the center of the island. The plan that we came up with for this little beach village has a couple of important components to it. First of all, when you come across the causeway today, and I apologize to you folks over there, I'd love to run back and forth between both screens, but I can't quite do that. But you'll see where the causeway comes across today. Today it comes in here and dead ends into that convention center. We've moved that road a little bit, and one of the reasons we moved that road is so that we can get the retail, the small little retail shops that we're talking about, and the hotels all on the same side of a street, of a major street, so you don't have kids crossing the street back and forth and all that. Put it all into a tight little village, and that's the reason for the movement of the roads. Take the convention center, and you'll see the blue block over there on the far right-hand side. That blue block, that's the new convention center that we're talking about. So you move the convention center off the beach, get it over here in an area so it's by itself a little bit. Now, it's still within walking distance of the center of the village, but you want it off to the side a little bit so that it's the cars and the competition for parking spaces and all these other things don't interfere with people who just want to go to the beach or just want to come in here and maybe shop in a couple of little shops and go to the beach, or with the hotels that are over here in this area. Put the convention center off to one side, and that was the rationale for putting it over there. Associated with that convention center, you'll see, is a hotel. Is a hotel that does touch the beach area down in here. That new hotel would be a relatively large hotel. We feel like we needed one hotel that was kind of a signature hotel associated with the convention center to give it some spark. So that's a large hotel down here associated with the convention center, but it's not a Ritz-Carlton. You know, it's not a 5-star hotel, but it is a nice hotel. And put that right down there. Put 2 other hotels in this area. One in here on the beach, a mid-scale hotel, and another one that's an economy hotel that's about 50 yards, 100 yards off the beach, like that. Create a little town center with some green space and some shops. And you've got little books on your table too, and those will have a copy of this plan in there, and you can look at that and take it home with you. But a little bit of green space, an open area like the center of a town. Associated with that, an environmental discovery center, a place where you can go and begin to understand other environmental destinations on the island, other places where you can go. Where's the Turtle Center? How do I get there? What about a marsh tour? And what about taking my kids and teaching them about things out there on the marsh? Why can't we do that out of one location associated with the center of the village down here? So that's what that little thing is all about. Some retail shops, not a lot of retail shopping, about double what the space is today of retail shopping, so that we can accommodate those people who've been there for a long time as businesses, find a way to accommodate them, and then enhance that as well with some new shopping. Not big shops, no retail outlets, no retail outlet stores, nothing like that, but some shopping that provides something in the mix in here. The rest of this area, where these little yellow buildings are, those are cottages. Now they are condo type units in a cottage structure, so they look like cottages in the historic district. They're not condo towers. There was a lot of fear about that early on. That's not what these are. These are small little buildings with pathways all in between those. So it's like a neighborhood. You want to go ride your bike and have a great experience among some neighborhoods and see some pretty landscaping and that kind of thing, great. You can go out on the island and have a great natural experience doing that and bicycle 22 or 25 miles if you want to. If you want just a little experience that's only a mile or so, you can wander all these little neighborhoods in here with these bicycle and pedestrian pathways. So that's what we've tried to do, create a little something for everybody. The putt-putt course and playground, we will find a way to incorporate those into this village as well. Today, that little putt-putt course is right over here, and playground are right over here where we plan to put that convention center. So we will relocate those in some way in the village too. Horton Square, that's kind of that. This is a close-up of that little area down in the center of the town, a place where you can have art exhibits, music festivals, all kinds of things down there in the center of the village. Hyde Park, and the names of these things are proposed names. Horton is the name of one of the early settlers of Jekyll. Mr. Hyde was the first president of the Jekyll Island Club. So some of the people say, well, what's the Jekyll Hyde thing going on here? You know, where did that come from? Well, that's where that name comes from. And this is a park, if you will, a natural area, not a landscaped park, but a natural area of freshwater wetlands that are then used to help filter as well. It's a filtration system. This water is actually filtered before it gets into this wetland. But all of the water that comes through the village, all of that water is captured from rain barrels off of roofs and captured through underground and through porous systems. All of the surfaces are porous surfaces that are planned for the new village. I'll tell you more detail about that in a minute. Convention Center Hotel looks a little bit like the historic hotel in the historic district, and that's not unintentional that we did that, and have that close to the beach and close to the historic golf course that is right there across the road from it. Again, the neighborhoods, north and south colonies of cottages, parking behind those buildings for those cottages. The rain barrels and the other environmentally sensitive things that we've done. One of the things that we did right from the beginning was that I gave a call to a good friend of mine, Dennis Creech, who's a friend of Mr. Tate's over here that we talked about a few minutes ago, is the head of the South Face Energy Institute. Now, if you haven't had South Face come and be a speaker here, you probably should. South Face is a fantastic organization, nonprofit. They help companies, developers, all kinds of people understand the value of energy conservation and the value of building in a green environment, and it's green in a sustainable way, environmentally sustainable way. Of course, that's a hot topic for everybody these days. South Face has been doing it for 15 years or 20 years, so they've been around a long time. They developed something interesting the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years, something called Coastal Community Guidelines, Earthcraft Development Guidelines or Community Guidelines for coastal developments. They went down on the coast and did that, spent a lot of time figuring out what are the special things that are required of developments on the coast in a coastal environment to make a building more energy efficient and to make it more environmentally sustainable. We took their scorecard and we got them at the table and made them part of our team right from the beginning. And we said, how do we max out this scorecard? How do we take everything we can possibly do and put it into this little village to make it environmentally sustainable as possible? And make it a model. Let's make Jekyll a model for green building for the coast of Georgia or for the eastern United States. Why not in a coastal environment? Wouldn't that be a great thing for Jekyll to do? Not just meet some standards because somebody said we had to, or because they thought it was, that'd be a nice little tail on that pig. Instead, make it something really special. And so we worked hard to do that. And you'll see that throughout a number of the things that we've done here. Rain capture, of course. Even green roofs on top there. We don't have many flat top roofs, but a couple of places where we do on the convention center, we're going to make those green roofs. I even had one of the DNR wildlife habitat guys say to me, can you put a little bit of pea gravel on that green roof over on one side? And I said, sure, why do you ask? He said, well, there's a particular bird called a least tern, and they love nesting in that pea gravel on top of buildings. And I said, sure, we'll do that. Why not? I mean, that's an easy thing to do. But those are the kinds of creative things we're trying to get people to come to us and talk with us about. A variety of lodging alternatives, the economy hotel, mid-scale hotel, convention hotel, the vacation cottages. These cottages, yes, they're types of condos, but they're in a rental pool, so people can rent those out, just like you do at other beach destinations all up and down the East Coast and at Jekyll today. A vacation club. This is what used to be called timeshare. Timeshares had kind of a seedy reputation back in the 1970s and 80s. I don't know if you know what's happened to that business, but Disney and Marriott took that industry over in the 1980s. And it is a legitimate industry that is doing very well because people want that kind of accommodation. A lot of people do. They pay $16,500 for one of these units, and that's what they pay for the rest. I mean, that's the one-time payment, and that gives them this 7 days for the rest of their lives that they can use. and they can use it kind of anytime they want to. They don't sign up for the second week of November for the rest of their lives. It means that they've signed up for 7 days. They call up and make a reservation for the week that they want, just like you'd call a hotel, and they get booked into one of those units. And so those things are very, very popular. The economics on those things are spectacular for a beach destination for a couple of reasons. The occupancy is 90%. You get 90% or plus occupancy of these units. These people stay for 7 days. They bring 5.5 people to stay in one of these units. The average hotel room is 2.1 people, 2.1 persons in a hotel room. And they spend 40% more during their stay. Now, and the reason they spend 40% more is because they don't have a bill at checkout. It's not like a hotel room. And so they come to the beach ready to have fun and ready to spend some money, and they do it all year long. So it helps you with seasonality. These little shops down there at Jekyll today, they struggle, from November to, or October, November until March or April. They're really struggling. This helps tremendously to overcome that and keep those little shops really doing well. The architecture, extend the signature architecture of the historic district. Historic architecture is environmentally friendly with the big eaves and the big open windows and those kinds of things. Appropriate scale, height restrictions, not modern high-rises. A gateway island, that's what I like to talk about, Jekyll. Its special role, providing a recreational experience in developed areas and a natural experience in its undeveloped areas. That is very special. Promote barrier island ecology. Execute this environmental discovery center. Make those things happen. If Cumberland Island, to use a kind of an extreme there, Cumberland's right next door to Jekyll. And we all know Cumberland's very hard to get to. And it's environmentally pristine, more or less, with some spectacular things that are there. Well, Jekyll's got some spectacular things too environmentally, but it also has a causeway. Jekyll will never be Cumberland Island in terms of maintaining that intensity of ecological significance. It may never achieve that in the same way that Cumberland is, but it can have a different role. It can have an educational role so that every child in Georgia or every adult in Georgia can go and learn something about the value of these barrier islands and the ecology of these barrier islands and all the different wildlife things. It can be a fantastic educational destination. And there are a lot of things that we need to I can't wait till we get past this development stage of talking about Jekyll and start talking about what I call the programming. What's going to happen with the educational destination? What are some of the things that we can brainstorm on how to make that happen? How can we work with universities, with 4-H, with the University of Georgia, other people to make those educational things happen as well? So that's something we really want to spend some time on going forward. The economic impact of this revitalization, $300 million of private investment, 1,000 jobs created, about half of those permanent jobs, half of them construction jobs, $158 million payroll boost, $200 million in revenues to the Jekyll Island Authority over this 15-year period, a tax boost, all of these things that provides this economic engine that we need to have for revitalization. We've learned a lot the past 5 or 6 months. We've taken this little show on the road. We did this in a number of public forums that we announced, had people come to on Jekyll, in St. Mary's, in Augusta, in Atlanta, and then I've done a number of Rotary clubs and other things, all in Kiwanis clubs across Georgia. Learning a lot about several of these issues, and I want to touch on these briefly, and then I'll open it up for some questions. Affordability, average daily rates. What we're talking about here is 72% of all the new accommodations will be below $139 per night per room, and about 50% below $96 per night per room. Now that includes those rooms in the cottages that are for rent. There was a little exchange we had to have a legislative session the other day with Ed Boshears. You might have seen that in the paper, where Ed says, well, wait a minute, this is being deceptive. You're putting those cottages in the mix of the accommodations. Yeah, that's right. They're in the rental pool of all those things. Well, but you're talking about this on a per night per room. But yeah, that's right. Because let me tell you, and every fraternity and sorority group at the University of Georgia knows when they go to the Georgia-Florida game, what do they like to rent out? They like to rent out cottages like that. It's condo units. So you have 2 or 3 bedrooms around an open area and a kitchen, and they'd much rather do that, and it's much cheaper than renting 3 rooms rent 3 rooms in a condo like that is going to be cheaper than renting 3 rooms in an economy hotel, even at $105 a night. Much cheaper to do that, and they get a better environment. They get a kitchen. They get all these other things. School groups love that. Church groups particularly like that. They do their fellowship things in these little areas in the condo areas. So 50% of those accommodations below $96 per night per room. All the new accommodations. I mean, even if you took just the hotel rooms and did this across, the average hotel room price would be about $127 a night, which is about on the average of what it is today at Jekyll. All the new accommodations will be within the range of the average daily rates of existing hotels on the island. Not more expensive, not less expensive, but in that range of what the hotel accommodations are at Jekyll today. Public access is not being eliminated. We're talking about parking, just restructured. Some of the new spaces will be located closer to the beach than any parking that exists today, and you're eliminating competition between people going to the convention and people going to the beach. All the new surface parking will be pervious surfaces. And we even went and did some walking, and we figured out and we measured every parking space and where they're located and how long it takes you to walk to the beach. This is a 1-minute walk. This is a 2-minute walk. This is a 3-minute walk. And so most of the parking will be within a 3-minute walk to the beach. The convention parking, yeah, that's further away. That's not intended for people who are coming to the beach. They can still park there and walk to the beach. Somebody said, oh, it's a 1/4 mile. They're proposing parking that's a 1/4 mile from the beach. If you park in the last parking space up here, yes, it's a 1/4 mile to the beach. But that's not the intent of that parking. And here's a chart that shows you this parking in a little more detail. Today, there are about 79 parking spaces that are within a 1-minute walk to the beach. We're planning 160 spaces. Today, there are 924 spaces within a 2-minute walk. Well, we spread it out between a 2-minute and 3-minute walk. So there'll be 1,200 spaces today, 1,322 spaces in the future, all within a 3-minute walk of the beach. Then you've got these additional spaces here that are designed for the convention parking. Public beach access, 8,500 feet of new pervious boardwalk with native plants, ripping up the old concrete, doing all those things. Same number and location of beach access points as exist today, improving the restroom and changing facilities. Does not affect beach access elsewhere on the island, and everything is ADA accessible. Loggerhead turtle habitat. All development will stay completely away from the dune areas. State and federal environmental regulations comply with all of those. State-of-the-art lighting techniques. Looking at some things in Florida, some unusual new things that they're doing in Florida and some of their beach destinations. Deflecting light away from the beach, real important during nesting season. The Georgia Sea Turtle Center will be involved in the planning and execution of this. Permanent residents. Some people say, well, you know, there are 425 permanent residents on Jekyll. They built houses there. The state let them do that in the 1950s, 1960s, on the 1970s. Well, we're not, and there's some controversy about that. Should we continue to do that? Those people have leases. Those leases run out in 2048, 2049, somewhere in that time period. And that issue's still up in the air. You know, what happens to long-term residents at Jekyll? Was that a good idea for the state to let residents come and live there long-term? We're not involved in that discussion, but we are involved in this part of it, where these cottages that we're talking about are designed to accommodate vacation visitors. They're not intended for permanent residents, and they're all placed in a rental pool. The density. What about the density of things why we put all these things together in this little beach village? Well, it concentrates activity, but 42% of this area is green space, you know, among these little cottages and these other places in there. The village center becomes the economic hub, this little economic engine. The retail is reliant on activity within that center. You got to put it all together. It's all part of the same little engine, and it's a delicate little engine. If you don't do it right and the retail fails, the whole thing starts to wind down. The retail fails, people walk by and say, gee, look at all those closed businesses. Jekyll isn't doing too good. They go home and say, yeah, I had a great time, but I'm not so sure about Jekyll or whether it can make it. And most of the retail shops were closed. You know, that kind of thing. You don't want that to happen. Critical mass is essential for that sustainability, creating that critical mass. Providing for a variety of lodging options, real important. Giving all Georgians an opportunity to enjoy the island, And all those program elements are essential. All the recreational components, the lodging, dining, all those things are important for making a great destination. The next steps in this process, we're finalizing and executing our contract with Jekyll Island Authority. We're doing that now. You might have seen that there was a lawsuit. One of the other bidders tried to sue us. He came in third. We were first. He was a distant third. All this came out, and a lot of this wasn't reported in the Atlanta paper. I want you to know the Brunswick newspaper is doing a far better job of reporting on this than the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. What's that? Yes. Okay, it was in the paper yesterday. Well, the lawsuit was dismissed, thrown out, all of that, and said this guy has no standing, and neither do any of his points. Even if he had standing, he wouldn't win on any of these points. So we are moving ahead with our contract with the Jekyll Island Authority. We're refining our plan. We'll go back to the public with a revision of the plan that you've seen, and we'll do that probably in the March time frame. And we're required to by law in this next round because it becomes an amendment to the 1996 master plan, and then comes design and engineering. Groundbreaking would be about a year from now. About a year from now. Here are kind of the three things that we say are, and this is my last slide, the three really important things that we're trying to do here. And that is, let me talk about the one on the bottom here first, because that's really a mission statement, I think. Providing a recreational and educational experience that is enjoyable and affordable for all Georgians. I think that's the right mission statement of what we're trying to do at Jekyll. You do that by creating a critical mass of new and compelling reasons for visitors to come back to Jekyll Island without doing too much. Without doing too much. We don't want a Hilton Head. We don't want a Panama City. Jekyll's its own special place, and we got to be careful with how we do that. But at the same time, you got to create a mass. You got to create a critical mass that makes sense. Achieving that right balance of economic sustainability with minimal impact on Jekyll's cultural and environmental resources. Really, really important. We've got time for about 7 or 8 minutes worth of questions. Yeah, Dory.
Hi, Jim. I know that you haven't mentioned it. It's not really your responsibility to mention it, but there are several other large projects going in on Jekyll that are more than just taking a paintbrush to the convention center. And I know that your proposal was for this area, but since you are proposing to be the long-term partner, how do you see your relationship with those other developments?
Good question. Good question. Did everybody hear that question? What's our relationship to the other hotels that are going in? There are other development projects going on, and what is our relationship with those? We're helping define that now during this contract negotiation phase that we're in with the Jekyll Island Authority. We hope that what it will be is where we can take control of things like marketing or design guidelines, so that, yeah, if somebody comes in who's another developer and they want to get control of another hotel property and redevelop that hotel property, we don't want it out of scale and out of balance with some of the other things that we're trying to achieve, either price-wise or architecturally or otherwise. So we're trying to get control of some of those issues so we can help make some consistency happen. Trammell Crow already has a new development, and they came to the table and had this development happen before we were named as a revitalization partner. That's the old Buccaneer Hotel, and that one was in the paper too, back in June or so, when they were awarded that contract. And so that relationship between us and Trammell Crow, we hadn't figured that out yet, about how much control we're going to have over some of those things. But we'll see. And yes, there are some other projects going on. We hope that, yes, that those other projects are beginning to happen because they believe that new economic activity is going to happen because of this new beach village, and they want to be part of that too and take control of that. Somebody had their hand up right back there. Is it working?
I have a two-phased question.
Sure.
One is time frames. Given that village and you've got merchants in there, what's their impact in 5 years, 10 years? And the other is, you mentioned sustainability and LEED. Why not go ahead and get the project certified?
Good question. A couple of answers. First of all, your question on time frame. Are you talking about the existing businesses on the island and the impact on them, or all within that footprint? We're still trying to figure out how to make it a good transition for those existing businesses that are there. Those people have been there a long time. They have struggled for years and years through thick and thin, and they deserve a break somewhere in this process. And we're gonna figure out something for them. Do we leave their things last to tear down, or do we tear them down early and build something else back? Do we have temporary facilities for them? so they can make money during the construction phase and all that. We're still trying to figure that out. We don't know. The phasing of the building, we're talking about building this thing in kind of 2 phases, building the new convention center, leaving the old convention center standing while we're building the new convention center, build the new hotels, get that kind of economic activity going in its own little engine, then tear down the old convention center and build out some of the cottages. So that's kind of the phasing plan. The other part of your question is why not go ahead and get LEED certified now? We haven't even gone out and done a survey yet. I mean, people say, "Oh my, are you kidding? You know, you're down this far." We did a conceptual plan to be chosen as a revitalization partner. All our design and engineering, we've got to wait until we get past the master plan piece in May and do that design and engineering in the summer. And yes, we'll go for that designation and go for the LEED designation as quickly as we can, as possibly can. Al?
Jim, I didn't tell you that my father owned one of those permanent residences down on Jekyll, and after I get through with my teaching career, I plan to live down there, and so I'm very interested in what's going on. I want to applaud you for your forward-thinking plans on here. One of the questions I have is that right now we're looking at the aftermath of 20 years previous when they built all the stuff that they have down there, and that's an extremely harsh environment for construction for any kind of structural material. And so I would like to know that when you get done building it, that 20 years down the road, we don't have twice the problem we have now with the kind of expense that entails. And 2 things about it. One is durability, and the other is the maintenance arrangements and how that will be. Is there Jekyll Island Authority willing to help support the maintenance this 2 times? Or are they just going to put it totally on the private enterprise, or how? Is any thought?
Good. Well, we've thought about it, and did everybody hear the question? I hope they did. This issue about maintenance of construction and construction techniques. The great thing is that over the past 30, 40 years, because of all the construction that's happened in coastal environments, East Coast and Gulf Coast, we get the benefit of that. Meaning all of the technology, all the new things that people have learned, both about storms and other harsh things that go on in coastal environments, we get to take advantage of those and incorporate those, and we'll do state of the art. Now you marry that with environmental sustainability in terms of the types of materials you're using and why are you using those. Again, a lot of new stuff, and we hope to really take advantage of that, going forward to make. And now, in terms of who pays for that going forward, we would say yes, that needs to be on the private sector, for the private sector to maintain. If the private sector invested and built those buildings, the private sector needs to maintain those buildings going forward. If the Jekyll Island Authority builds and the state builds the convention center, okay, they need to maintain that. But hopefully, let's keep the focus of the state of Georgia on those things down there, and then you won't have them falling in disarray. And if we do the right economic engine sustainability piece, we'll avoid that, we hope. Yes, sir. How are you? Hey, Bill. How are you? Haven't seen you in a long time. Right.
We're in the same class at the university.
Right.
And, my dad bought property at Tybee.
Right.
In 1926, facing the ocean. And he first had rental cottages, and he built a restaurant, then a miniature golf course.
Right.
When I was 10 years old, I was running a miniature golf course one afternoon, and I looked up. Since all the buildings were built with wooden shingles,
right,
the top of the building with our restaurant
right.
was on fire. And that afternoon, I watched 25 houses burn to the ground.
Wow.
I assume that you got a fire department included in your plan.
Good point. Good point. Did everybody hear that? Talking about Tybee and a fire at Tybee.
But anyway, these businesses put my 3 brothers and 2 sisters and me through college.
Wow.
At the university. All 6 of us
wow.
went to the university. The center of the Tybee was always the pier over the ocean.
Right.
I don't see any plan to build a pier over the ocean. Another thing at Tybee in those days, since it was a seasonal business,
right.
in the wintertime everything closed down just about.
Right.
Slot machines were very important to owners because that was the most profitable part of their business.
Right.
And,
speak in the microphone a little bit more.
What?
Speak in the microphone a little bit more. There you go.
All right.
Okay.
This better?
That's good for other folks to hear. Yeah.
But anyway, they used to well, the slot machines help cover the fixed expenses in the wintertime.
Right.
And but anyway, my dad built a 30-room hotel on the site where he had cottages in 1931, and he owned it until 1957.
Wow.
And so I've never been to Jekyll Island, but I learned later they've written a history of Tybee, and I'm sure there are a lot of good points and bad points that can be learned from the history of Tybee. I didn't realize that Tybee was only one of 4 barrier islands accessible to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the islands were bought by wealthy families.
That's right.
And the public was excluded.
Right.
But anyway, I love the beach, and I'm going to go to Jekyll, and maybe I'll own some property there
We'll make a
someday.
special visit
But I
with you.
congratulate you, and I'm fascinated with your presentation.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you. And thank you for your career at Coca-Cola for such a long time. And what Bill talked about was the fire department. Infrastructure at Jekyll, very important piece of the puzzle. What about roads and sewage and fire protection and police protection? Police protection today is provided at Jekyll by the Georgia State Patrol. And so, does that need to continue that way or not? That's one of the questions. Jekyll Island Authority is looking at the whole issue of capacity planning. They're hiring somebody now to look at what is the capacity of Jekyll going forward to handle new things. Well, we know we can go, if we went back to the levels of visitation that we have in 1990, that'd be doubling what's going to Jekyll today, almost. And so we know we can handle that. Beyond that, Jekyll Island Authority does need to investigate them more closely. They do have a fire department there today, and they do a great job, mostly volunteer.
I didn't realize until later that Tybee was one of 4 stops on the Atlantic seaboard
Right.
for the big name officers like Tommy Dorsey.
All those guys.
And
Yeah.
that became the youth center of the beach.
Yes. Yes. Tybee has a great history as Jekyll does. We'll get you. There's 4 or 5 great books about Jekyll history that maybe we'll get you a copy of too. Bill, it's good to see you. Yes.
Hey, at Lake Oconee, you have a great reputation for the Ritz-Carlton down there and for its international quality of service.
Right.
But also in the other parts of rentals, Linger Longer has a reputation for great service. How much of the convention center or hotels are going to be serviced by Linger Longer, or are they going to be contracted out to other organizations or flag hotels, et cetera?
Good question. Everybody hear that question? How much of the hotels at Jekyll will be contracted out to other companies, operating companies versus Linger Longer? We will probably contract these hotels out to someone of a caliber of a Marriott, somebody like that, somebody with great operating experience. That means operating the convention center too, at the same time by whoever's operating the big hotel. And the reason is that when you go into marketing those facilities, the hotel rooms and the convention facilities, you want those marketed by the same company. So they're selling the hotel rooms at the same time they're booking the convention center. And people who've got good operating experience and food service and all those things are really important at the convention center. The things like golf facilities and other recreational amenities, yes, we want to be able to control those things because yes, those are things that Linger Longer does very well, and we want to improve all those things on Jekyll, so that when you go there, it's a very good, consistent recreational and educational experience over the whole island. So everywhere you go, wow, I had a great experience at Jekyll. They've really thought about things really well, and boy, I didn't see any trash, and I didn't see this, and I didn't see that, and boy, they know how to run golf, and they know how to tie the golf into the hotel, and everybody had a great time, even if you just went there for a few hours for a day visit. Yes.
Jim, as a native Georgian and a second home resident of the Golden Isles, I've been following this pretty closely, but there are a couple questions I had.
Sure.
One is, other than the developers who might be sour grapes about not getting the RFP, why is there so much resistance to your bid? And then also, on the second part of that, I haven't really seen this answered about the bid, about the acreage. I know it's a small amount total, but
Right.
it seems like your proposal presented a separate plan that other people weren't in on. So I haven't really seen that addressed in the media, and maybe I just missed it, but I'd like to hear about that.
I'll address both those questions. And I'll address the last one first. Some people say, well, Drew, wait a minute. This is what the guy said in his lawsuit. These guys had a plan for 63 acres, and all the way through that RFP it said 45. And so I submitted a plan for 45 acres, and how did those guys win? Because they submitted a plan for 63. Judge addressed that in his order on Monday and said very clearly, Jekyll Island Authority, yes, said 45 acres, but they also said think creatively about what you want to do with the rest of the island and creatively about how you adjust things around that beach village. During one of the proposer conferences that was required for everybody to be there, and that other proposer was there, the question was asked, are we limited to the 45 acres of the beach village plan? Or can we look beyond that? And the answer was, no, you're not limited to that, and here's why you're not limited. And that went on and on. And so the judge took all that into consideration and said, hey, Linger just thought more creatively about the process, pushed the envelope a little bit, but they did it all within the rules. And the judge said that very, very clearly. The acrimony that's gone on, and there has been some, unfortunately, down on the island, I've tried to analyze, and I get involved in these things, and I've been involved for 30 years in environmental projects, but usually I'm on the other side of the table, trying to suggest to a developer why they need to do something better. And so this is a little bit unusual for me, and I took this project on. I thought, hey, it's going to be tough, but how else would I rather spend my time rather than on something as important as Jekyll Island? But all I got to do is just roll up my sleeves and jump in there, and I'll work with everybody, and we'll make it happen, and listen to everybody, and get all their ideas on the table, and why can't we all work this out together? And from the beginning, I realized, oh my gosh, some of those people just don't want to do that. Some of those people, all they want to do is fight. And they don't trust developers. They don't trust, what I'm trying to say or what the developer's trying to say. They just see it as all trying to gloss over an ugly pig. And so in their idea, they're fearful. They're fearful of change on Jekyll, I think. And I think we all should be protective of this great resource at Jekyll. We should all be, I would say fearful, but we should all be mindful of what we've got there that's important to preserve. Now, we are working hard with lots of folks to try to get good ideas on the table. Well, the input we've got, some people say, we don't want you to cut these roads in the maritime forest. Okay, we're going to look for ways to maybe reduce those roads in the maritime forest, not put the parking in there, find a different way to do the parking. But one of the ideas, the state senator down there has been hammering on us, wait a minute, you're going to be tearing up asphalt parking lots. You can't tear up those asphalt parking lots. And I went, oh my gosh, I thought I'd never have to defend tearing up an asphalt parking lot. And he said, we'd rather you build in the maritime forest than tear up that asphalt parking lot. And I went, well, Georgia Conservancy, what do you think about that? We don't like that idea. So everybody's got a different idea about what to preserve at Jekyll and what not to preserve. We're trying to sort it all out and come up with a plan that's best for Jekyll going forward.
Jim will be available if you have further questions. Certainly feel free to visit with him. But would you join me in thanking him?
Thank you.
And Jim, on behalf of the Alumni Board and Terry College of Business, I want to present you with this token of our appreciation, a sculpture by local artist Paul Benzunas.
Beautiful. Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Thanks for letting me come. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let me remind you, if you brought your parking ticket in, to have it validated on your way out. If you didn't bring it in with you, that's fine. Simply tell the attendant that you were part of Terry Third Thursday. Thank you for being with us today. Look forward to seeing you on February 21st when our guest will be Doug Benn. Have a good day.